GLM 5.2 is 5.7 times cheaper on output than Claude Opus 4.8. And if you're running a million tokens a day, that gap is $20 every single day. Both models are real contenders, but that price delta is not small. Both models dropped recently and developers are already picking sides. So the timing matters. I went through official pricing pages, model cards, and independent benchmark reports, comparing Claude Opus 4.8 versus GLM 5.2 across 5 tests to see who actually wins. And the part that might surprise you is that the cheaper model doesn't just win on price. There's a deployment decision buried in test 5 that could flip which one you pick. And I'm not going to spoil it yet. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. I pulled every number from sourced data only, and where the evidence was thin or one-sided, I say so plainly rather than guess. You've probably heard both tools are great at coding, and both are worth the price. But that's kind of a lazy take. If you're a solo dev shipping production code or a team running thousands of API calls a day, the wrong pick costs you real money and real time. And that's what we're actually sorting out here. Test 1, coding performance. The day your model fails on a real GitHub issue, you're not just debugging code, you're burning hours and explaining it to someone. S2B Bench Pro is 300 real-world GitHub issues, not toy problems. So a 7-point gap here is the difference between shipping and not shipping. What I found, Claude Opus 4.8 scored 69.2% on S2B Bench Pro per True Foundry's verified run. GLM Mine 5. 2 came in at 62.1%, but I want to be upfront that number is community reported, not on an official model card. So directionally, the gap is real, but I wouldn't treat it as exact. On SWE Bench Verified, Opus 4.8 hit 88.6%, and I couldn't find any GLM 5, 2-figure to compare against. Now, the 7-point gap looks clean on screen, but take it with a grain of salt because the 2 scores didn't come from the same testing setup. Opus 4.8's number is vendor verified, GLM 5.2's is from the community, so the gap is probably real, but it could be narrower than it looks when someone runs a proper head-to-head. Claude Opus 4.8 takes coding. GLM 5.2 got a lot of hype going in, but 69.2% to 62.1% is a real edge even with the caveat on GLM score, and the safer pick for production coding is Opus 4.8, because the downside of picking wrong on a real code base is a lot of lost time. That puts Claude Opus 4.81 GLM 5.20. Test 2, pricing per token. Here's a concrete number to sit with. At 1 million output tokens a day, Claude Opus 4.8 costs you $25, and GLM 5.2 costs you $4.40, which is a $20.60 daily difference. And if you run that for a month, you're looking at over $600 extra just for sticking with the more expensive model. I looked at the official rates from Z.AI and Anthropic's pricing page. Claude Opus 4.8 runs $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output. GLM 5.2 is $1.40 input and $4.40 output. At Z.AI's official rate, which works out to roughly 3.5 times cheaper on input and 5.7 times on output. Deep Infra claims even lower rates at 95 cents and $3, but those are vendor claimed and I couldn't independently verify them. GLM 5.2 wins pricing and is not even close. 5.7 times cheaper on output is a number that matters a lot at scale, and the gap at official rates is wider than I thought it would be going in. If your budget is tight, the safer pick is GLM 5.2 because the cost difference compounds every single day. That ties it up 1 each. Test 3 output speed. A solo dev running a code review pipeline on a Friday afternoon doesn't want to wait around while the model slowly generates output. Low tokens mean slow feedback loops, and slow feedback loops mean you're shipping late, so speed is where this comparison gets a little frustrating to report. What surprised me here is that GLM 5.2 has real measured speed data, 157.5 tokens per second median across providers, 106 tokens per second sustained, and Base10's FP4 optimized setup hits 280 plus tokens per second. For Claude Opus 4.8, I couldn't find any published speed figure in the sources, so the data is one-sided and I can't make a fair call. No winner here. GLM.5.2 has the numbers. Opus 4.8 doesn't have a published figure I could verify, so awarding this one to either side wouldn't be fair. Speed is a draw on the data we have. 2 tests left. And the next one is where the 5.7 times price gap stops being the whole story. Context window and deployment flexibility are still on the table, and one of them is going to change which model actually fits your workflow, so stick around. Test 4, context window. 1 million tokens is the number that matters here. If you're trying to feed an entire code base or a massive document set into a single prompt, and your model cuts you off halfway through, you're breaking up your work into chunks and losing coherence. And that's a real workflow cost. I looked at Entropic's official pricing page, and Claude Opus 4.8 has a verified 1 million token context window, which is a standout number. For GLM 5.2, I couldn't find any published context window figure in the sources at all, so this is one-sided data. But the gap is real in the sense that Opus 4.8 has a confirmed documented number, and GLM 5.2 doesn't. No winner on context either, because I can't compare a verified number against no number. Opus 4.8's 1 million tokens is real and documented, but without a GLM 5.2 figure to put next to it, awarding the point wouldn't be honest. Still tied at 1 each, 2 draws. Test 5, accessibility and deployment. You've probably thought about this one already. What happens when Anthropic's API goes down, or their pricing changes, or your compliance team says you can't send data to a third-party API? If your model is closed and you can't self-host, you're stuck. And that's a real risk. What I found here is pretty clear. GLM 5.2 is open weight and available on Hugging Face, meaning you can self-host it, fine-tune it, and run it on your own infrastructure, while Claude Opus 4.8 is a closed API, full stop. On the flip side, Opus 4.8 has a verified Brave Search integration for web access, and I couldn't find any equivalent published for GLM 5.2, so there's a real trade-off depending on what you need. GLM 5.2 takes accessibility. Open weight plus self-hosting is a clear structural advantage over a closed API when you need control over your deployment. And the safer pick for teams with data or compliance constraints is GLM 5.2 because being locked into a closed API can get expensive fast. That puts GLM 5.2 ahead 1-2. So where does Claude Opus 4.8 clearly win? Coding for 169.2% on S2E Bench Pro is a verified source number, and it beats GLM 5.2's community reported 62.1% by 7 points. Context window, 1 million tokens confirmed on Anthropic's pricing page, with no comparable GLM 5.2 figure. And web search, Brave Search integration is verified. GLM 5.2 has nothing published to match it. And where does GLM 5.2 clearly win? Price by a lot, $1.40 per million input tokens versus $5 and $4.40 per million output versus $25, which is $3.5 on output at official rates. Speed, 157.5 tokens per second median is measured and documented. And flexibility, open weight, self-hostable, no API dependency. I went in thinking the coding gap would dominate, but the 5.7 times output cost difference is a number that keeps coming back. Here's the decision rule. If you need peak coding performance and a verified 1 million token context window, go Claude Opus 4.8. If you need cost control, self-hosting, or you're running high volume, GLM 5.2 is the safer pick. 5.7 times cheaper on output is not a rounding error. Next up, I ran GLM 5.2 against Gemini 2.5 Pro, and the price story gets way more interesting because the performance gap flips in a couple of spots you wouldn't expect, and that one's already on the channel if you want to keep going.